Hello Owens, Spencer here. I've been asked to give a talk for you from Trusting God in Difficult Times. I know Owens really well. I grew up in Potters Bar, left for Sheffield for 10 odd years, and I've just come back. I'm now the pastor of Causeway Community Church, but it's great to be asked to talk to you on such an important thing. We all know hard times. Life now feels really hard. But as I was thinking about what I'd speak to you for, I wanted to have something that was personal to me. And I think, despite the fact that so many things seem to be going wrong, actually, I think the hardest thing that I find is when there's rejection. When I am rejected and left feeling lonely. And we all know a sense of loneliness, don't we? And even worse when it's people that we love, people that we've trusted before, and they've turned their backs on us. And we're left, going, I don't know what to think anymore. I used to trust these people and now they've abandoned me. When I was thinking about where to take our talk from, I decided to go from Psalm 3. King David, he knows all about rejection, and he knows about rejection from those who love him. It starts by saying it's a psalm of David, this King David, when he fled from his son Absalom. Okay, his son, his very own son, he's turned against him. His son has decided to raise himself up and try and get rid of his dad so that he can be king. And as so often happens, he's not just turned against him, but he's raised up a whole crowd of other people that are also turning against the king. And that's so often what happens, isn't it? If you've ever been rejected, and I'm sure you have, isn't it so often the case that a friend turns their back on us, and then even worse, they then seek to turn others. They seek to turn other friends against us, and before you know it, you've gone from having this group of people that you love and you trust and you spend hours and hours with, and then you're left alone. One by one, they turn against you. It's hard. And David sings this psalm, writes this psalm, to help him work through, how do I deal with that? He starts by saying, Lord, how many are my foes? How many rise up against me? There's loads of people turning against him. Many are saying of me, God will not deliver him. And that's the big danger. When we've got people turning against us, we feel like we're alone. Others might be saying, or we might be tempted to think, God can't deliver me from this. I'm alone. What can God do in this situation? But David goes on and says, no, there is great hope. We can trust God when we're rejected. He says, but you, Lord, are a shield around me. He says God is himself a shield that's like wrapping around us and keeping us safe. Now think about when we need a shield. This is important. David doesn't pick this image from nowhere. He knows it's difficult. David's saying, I need a shield because I'm in a battle. You don't need a shield when you go into McDonald's. You don't need a shield when life is all roses and petals, do you? You need a shield when there's a battle, when there's arrows flying against you, insults coming right at you. But he has a shield. These insults, they bounce off because God is his shield. For us, that means when we're being called a loser, we're protected. When we're being called a lowlife, we're protected. And why are we protected? Because we're surrounded by God himself. God who made us and loved us, who says that you are my son or my daughter. And what that means is when other people are saying that we're a loser, that truth protects us. God loves me. It can bounce off. Still in a battle, it's still hard, but as they say, who are you? You waste of space, and it bounces off because we know we're protected by the shield of knowing that God loves us. He says, my glory, the one who lifts my head high. When we're being rejected, it's tempting to have our heads low and feel dejected, like we've lost, our heads are hanging low. Here it says, God himself lifts our head up. You know, like if you're playing sport and your head drops and the coach shouts from the side, lift your head. Keep going, lift your head. God does that to us. He speaks to us and says, lift your head. And then finally he says, I call out to the Lord, and he answers me from his holy mountain. I lie down and sleep. I wake again because the Lord sustains me. He says, I will go down to sleep in the night, so he can get sleep even though these horrible things are happening to him. He gets some sleep, and he knows he'll wake up because God sustains him. What he's saying is there's hope for tomorrow. What's happening now is not the end. There's hope for tomorrow. I'll wake up. But I want us to think, how do we know that we'll get these helps? How do we know that God loves us and that protects us? How do we know that God speaks to us and lifts our head? How do we know that we have hope for tomorrow? Well, one of the wonderful things about Psalms, and this is always have this in your head, is Jesus sung the Psalms. When he was a boy, he was a Jewish boy, and he'd have learnt every one of these Psalms and sung them. So when we read a psalm, it's really helpful to think in our heads, well, what was Jesus thinking when he was singing this psalm? Well, think about it. David knew his one son was turning against him. But Jesus knew that all his sons and daughters, if you like, the ones that were made through him, all of them are going to betray him. When he's on the cross, all of his disciples have abandoned him. Peter denies him 3 times. He knows rejection. He knows what it feels like. He knows people shouting, God will not deliver him. I mean, that is what they say, isn't it, when he's on the cross? You can't save yourself. God won't deliver you. But Jesus had a shield around him. He knew that God would sustain him, that God would keep him, that he was his son. He knew that the Father would lift his head, and when he went down to sleep in the tomb, sleep of death, well, then he did rise again. And we don't just see Jesus as an example, but we see that because he was the one that was rejected. In fact, he was rejected even to death, and yet the Father raises him up to new life. We have hope too. And we know that God speaks to us now through the Bible, but our ultimate hope is that one day we will be welcomed in, never rejected again. We'll be welcomed by God, and he will say, well done, my faithful servant. Welcomed as ones that will never face that rejection. Jesus never rejects us now. He will always lift our heads, and he will sustain us for the next day. Let me pray for you. I know that particularly through secondary school, these sort of rejection things can be really difficult. So let me pray for you that you would trust God in difficult times. Father, thank you for the CU at Owens. Lord, I pray that they would know Jesus and love him. Know that he is a shield to them. Know that he lifts their head and that he will sustain them for another day. Lord, if there's anyone that is feeling like they're rejected right now, pray that they particularly would know that you love them and care for them. Nice to talk to you. Hope to meet you one day. But until next time, see ya.